Bartow.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. It's really great to be here, and it really wasn't that far to come over from Roswell, so I have a lot of friends here. It's good to see you, Matthew. Thanks for coming out, and Commissioner, thank you for being here. A lot of you know me, and you know that my career and my filter really is my business experience. And what I've learned from my business experience as an executive with KPMG, with Vision Corporation, which is a global eye care manufacturing company, and then as CEO of the North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, an organization that I took literally from the brink of bankruptcy back to solvency, I learned this, that results matter. And just as they matter in the business world, they matter in elected office as well. So let's take a look at the results that we've gotten out of Congress these days. We've seen our debt go in the past 20 years from $4 trillion to $17 trillion. In the time that the three congressmen who are running have all served together, the debt has nearly doubled. We haven't had a balanced budget. We have not had a balanced budget since President Clinton was in office. This is ridiculous. We have got to do better than that. We're overregulated, we're overtaxed, we have the federal government in our health care, we have the federal government in our education. And it is time for every single one of us to stand up and step up and say, enough is enough. If we're going to change what's happening in Washington, we have to send new leaders, individuals who have not only the guts to stand up and do what's right, but actually have the resolve to get it done. And I'm the proven conservative in this race with a track record of actually having done just that, of putting my conservative principles actually into action and getting things done and moving forward on conservative principles. When I was chairman of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, when I first came in, the Democrats had a budget on the table with a $3 million property tax increase to deal with a $100 million budget deficit. Now, I could have just voted no and had a press conference and told everybody how great I was for voting no. But what would the result have been? The result would have been a $3 million property tax increase, and that was not good enough. I had a responsibility and an obligation to do better and to be different. I went to work on that budget, and we found smart, strategic cuts to take in the budget. I came back to my colleagues with a new plan, and I was able to secure the votes to pass that budget without a tax increase, and I did that each and every year as chairman of that commission. And oh, by the way, I did it without the benefit of a Republican majority. When you gave me the extraordinary privilege of being the first elected Republican Secretary of State, I had a photo ID law that the legislature had passed out, but it was languishing on the sidelines because no one had figured out a way to do the right kind of implementation and outreach plan that could get us through the courts. Went to work on that and came up with the right kind of plan so that indeed we got photo ID implemented. I also, that was right when the state was seeing a huge decline in revenues. I needed to find 20% reduction in the Secretary of State's office, while at the same time maintaining vital services like ensuring that we had secure elections, making sure that people who needed their professional license got it in a timely manner, making sure that corporation papers were processed in a quick and efficient manner. I did that and was able to maintain the services. And just as the legislature is moving forward now with zero-based budgeting, the Secretary of State's office was the very first state agency to move to zero-based budgeting. That happened under my tenure, and I stand by that. It's the right thing to do, so I'm glad to see that going forward. I think it will really pay a lot of dividends. So we really are going to have individuals, again, with guts and resolve, because it is not enough. It's not enough for any of us to just vote no. It's not enough to introduce bills that go nowhere. And it's certainly not enough to blame the other side, because it would be easy for us to blame the Democrats. But the truth is, the hard truth, is that accommodating Republicans helped to get us in this place. And we have a right to demand better. And we need individuals who are going to stand up for principle and not cave in. A lot of people in this race are going to talk about that they're pro-life, but there's one person in this race who had to do more than just talk about being pro-life. Most of us, we are pro-life. We like to have testimony about our beliefs. But every once in a while, you come to a moment where you have to make a decision whether you're going to put your principles first. And when the pro-abortion bullies came after me and vilified me for my pro-life beliefs, I chose principle, my pro-life beliefs, over my paycheck. That's the kind of leadership, the kind of resolve, the kind of guts that I'm going to bring to the United States Senate so that we can get America back on a better trajectory for the future. We need to get the federal government out of educating our children, and we need to get the federal government out of our health care, on Obamacare. We need to repeal it in its entirety. A couple of people talk about fixing it, tweaking it around the edges. It needs to go completely, and we need to replace it with common sense, patient-centered, market-driven health care reform, because we all know we have healthcare issues in this country. We need to have portability of plans. We need high-risk pools. I think we should feel grateful and blessed that we live in a country where medical innovation has enabled people who just 10 years ago with diseases, illnesses, or accidents wouldn't be with us today, and yet they are with us today. Not just alive, but thriving. We ought to embrace that and find a way to address that. And additionally, and importantly on healthcare reform, we need to have more tort reform so that we can deal with the cost increases that really do come from defensive medicine. We need to get our spending under control, and we need to begin to deal with the debt. I think we need to move to a 2-year budget cycle so that we spend just as much time looking at not just how much money is the federal government going to spend, but let's spend some time looking at what we're spending, why we're spending it, and are the dollars we're spending efficient and effective and in the scope of the responsibilities of the federal government. Every year, Senator Coburn puts out his waste book, and Congress acts on virtually nothing in there. And there is waste rampant at the federal level. Just a couple of things. Why did we spend almost $1 million to build a fancy lighted soccer field at Guantanamo Bay so that suspected terrorists could play soccer at night? Why is the IRS continuing to send out the door hundreds of millions of dollars in refunds, not only to illegals, but to people who don't even qualify for the tax credit? Why are we spending hundreds of millions of dollars paying invoices that aren't even valid invoices? Why are we sending tens of millions of dollars to Morocco for economic development? I got nothing against Morocco, mind you. I just don't think our tax dollars should be paying for their economic development. We need to have not just tax reform, folks, but we need to rewrite the tax code, repeal the 16th Amendment, scrap the IRS, and get moving with the fair tax. And on top of that, I will tell you this, to have the highest corporate tax rate of any industrialized country in the world is crushing us from a competitiveness standpoint. And we're overregulated. Obamacare is just the tip of the iceberg on the regulations that companies in this state and around this country are facing. In 2011, the costs affiliated with regulatory compliance, one-time cost, $6.5 billion just in 1 year. Ongoing compliance costs, $5 billion a year. Georgia is home to the largest concentration of payment processing companies in the country, in the world actually. It is one of our major employment drivers. That segment of the industry is regulated by no less than 19 federal agencies. And Congress has systematically abdicated its regulatory responsibility over to bureaucrats in offices in Washington. We ought to have a complete audit of all the regulatory climate so that we can start to roll back the regulations that have been there for 10, 20, 30 years that are harming business. Inject into the system an opportunity not only for Congress to look at what the impact is of the regulations that they've implemented, but also for business to have the ability to input back about the impact they're having in terms of being able to innovate and grow jobs. Getting our economy going again, I think, really does rest on dealing with the tax code and reforming the regulatory climate. And then I think the last piece, folks, is we do have a lot of uncertainty in the country. And, you know, I'm involved with a group that does a lot in the venture capital area, and we have so many dollars sitting on the sidelines and not being invested in innovation and new ventures. Why? Because people are uncertain. How can they trust the people in Washington to do anything? Look at the results. And if we want more of the same, then let's keep sending the same people there. In the end, though, no matter how difficult the challenges seem to be, and I know they seem really daunting, but this is still the great United States of America. And generations before us sacrificed everything They sacrificed everything so that each one of us could live in a country of freedom and opportunity. And so I ask each of you, what's going to be the legacy that we leave? What will be our legacy for these young people and their children? I will not sit on the sidelines and watch as America slips into mediocrity. We are better than that. We can do better than that. We know we are where we are because we've lived in freedom and with great opportunity. And I know that only in America could I be standing before you this morning to ask for your vote to be your next United States Senator. When I left home when I was 17 to move away from an abusive environment, I could have never imagined the plans that God would have for me or the path that my life would take. I mean, I know I owe a great debt, and it has only been because of a great God and an extraordinary nation that a young girl was able to go out on her own and work hard and be able to be successful and prosper. I owe a lot back to this country for that. It was 1980, and the first president that I got to vote for was Ronald Reagan. And a short time after he was elected, he told a country that at that time, just like today, was frightened, frustrated, angry, uncertain about what the future held. He told this country that our best days were ahead. And when he said that, he spoke to a young girl trying to make it on her own. And in those words, I knew that if a country's best days were ahead, so too would be mine. That's why I'm running to be your next United States Senator, because I want to make sure that this country's best days are still ahead. So I ask for your vote, but I'm going to work very hard to earn it. And then together, we are going to have the guts and the resolve to do what we need to do to make sure that we always preserve the great United States of America as a nation of opportunity and of great freedom. Thank you, and God bless you. A few questions. It's getting hot, but I'll stick around.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to stick around, too.
We'll take 2 or 3 questions, and then if there's any more beyond that, the candidates and Ms. Handel will be here afterwards.
I appreciate your positions on oversight, but one of the things that I think everybody recognizes is the complete abuse of executive power.
No doubt.
And I would like to know what your plan is, because I've heard several senators say, okay, we need to go back to advice and consent. We need to rein in the executive branch and give Congress back its rightful place. And I'd like to know what your intentions are and what you would do.
I agree with that completely, but I think a lot of it rests on, frankly, making sure that we have a GOP majority in the Senate. Because to really be able to do that, we need the House and the Senate. And so as we're just a little bit over 100 days to this primary, we need to think about who is the right best person to go there to be a proven conservative and do the things that need to be done. And we need to consider who is the best person to take on Michelle Nunn, because believe you me, Harry Reid, he thinks that he's going to come to Georgia and get himself a Senate seat. And we need to send a message, folks, that we're going to have none of that. And we got to make sure that we hold this seat, because doing just that, reining in the executive branch from going forward and using executive orders to circumvent the authorities and powers of the United States Congress rests in having control of that Senate. Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, America is tired of what's going on in Congress. One of the issues that seems to be becoming more transparent right now is career politicians. You know, they get in there, they enable themselves because they want to represent the people, and then they get the position and they want to retain that. That's obvious, that's human nature. The question I'm asking you is, do you support term limits for yourself or for Congress? And what would you feel is the appropriate terms that you would be able to initiate the issues that you can control and help the state of Georgia and the people here without being there for the next 40 years?
Exactly. I am 100% supportive of term limits. I have already said at the very beginning of this race that I will serve 2 terms in the United States Senate. Folks, that is 12 years. If I don't get the job done in 12 years, you ought to be booting my butt out anyway. We need to have individuals who are going to go to Washington and be focused on the job, because after all, this is a job. And unfortunately, career politicians, the 3 congressmen in this race together have served 42 years in Washington. Now, y'all, that is a lot of Washington. And what's happened is career politicians have made Washington a way of life instead of a job. And how is it that we got to the place that in order to make an impact, it's all about keeping the seat warm for the longest amount of time? That's ridiculous. It should be about results and people who can go there and make a difference. Throughout my time as Fulton County Commission Chairman and as Secretary of State, I have proven that I have been able to get the job done from day one and get it done in the toughest of environments. I'm going to be a champion for term limits. I'm going to be a champion for cutting spending. We have folks, again, up to 20 years, some of them have been in there. Every single thing that these individuals are saying on the campaign trail, they've had 10, 20 years to do it. What would be different from moving from one side to the other? It's time to stop with career politicians and put people who want to do a job and get the job done.
What else?
Well, I'll hang around. KarenHandel.com. Please sign up. The election is just a little bit more than 100 days away. Most importantly, please get out to vote. I appreciate it. Thank y'all and God bless.